You can't mark a date and believe that that day you can turn it on. It's not about the date. It's about the commitment to yourself. It's about dating your purpose. It's about marrying yourself to your goals. It's about realizing that there is no one coming to save you but you. You have to be willing to put in the work. You must be willing to walk into success. You must be able to run past doubt. You must be able to go through the barbed wire of self-doubt and deprecating words that you have placed over yourself and tried to play it off like it was a joke, when in reality, you truly believe that you don't deserve things. It's time now for you to speak life over yourself.
Losing. Most of you hear losing and it makes you cringe, it makes you afraid, you fear being embarrassed, you fear being judged, you fear looking like an idiot in front of a bunch of people that won't matter to you in 5 years. But here's the thing, being willing to fail, being willing to lose, will create such a competitive advantage for you because most people can't do it. Most people can't be seen falling on their face. So our options are to stay the same or to actually be willing to fail.
This is your time. You have greatness in you, and everything that happens to you, I've come to know. Some things happen to you, some things happen for you.
And that is what I do. And that is what you can do too. If you have something to change, if you want to change something, change it. Change it now.
Kyle Burns, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining and making time. It means a lot to me that you you spent some time to join. Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Yeah, my name's Kyle Burns. I coach physique athletes as well as like general wellness. I'm an entrepreneur. A lot of what I do is online coaching and teaching people, consulting, and obviously a little bit of sales with all that stuff as far as the business standpoint. I have a degree in exercise science and from Colorado State University, but currently here in Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida to be exact, where I was born and raised. And like I said, just happy to be here and ready to kind of dive in when you are.
Nice. And you coach for Team Cosmic Bodies, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm the owner, co-owner, and coach for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, before I, started diving into some questions, I just wanted to say that I've been following you and your girlfriend, Lauren Dannenmiller, which you are her coach now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, correct.
And then for those of those that are listening that, might not be familiar or she is an IFBB Bikini Pro Olympian. And so I've been following you guys for a very long time, as a matter of fact, both on Instagram and on YouTube. This is before, when Lauren was barely competing on a national level, and then seeing her go through becoming a pro, and how you kind of basically took over her, prepping and coaching and everything like that. So it's been really nice to see both of you equally progressing in just everything that you guys do. So I really wanted to just, bring that up and say that I've been a huge fan of you guys. And so that's why I'm really, really excited that you have been able to join. And I'm really proud of you guys as well.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I was kind of wondering, I'm always interested to know how people found us or how long they've been following me or us or Lauren. So that's awesome to hear. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you guys offer some really valuable information. That's why I wanted to get you on the show, because, you guys really, you guys are really aligned with even my, what I value and model when it comes to like longevity and the mental health side of competing, even if you're like a lifestyle like myself, and you guys are not afraid to like step away from the stage to grow, to get the hormones back in check, like all those types of things are just like, you guys really model that, and you're not just like talking the talk, like you're actually like walking the walk. So, that's why I thought it was really awesome.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can definitely do it in a more responsible way. And that's what we're all about. Definitely longevity, because it is an extreme sport. But yeah, and people just do the whole fitness thing pretty extreme, all or nothing. So there's just definitely strategies you can use to make it balanced.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that I want to help on this specific series is to kind of bring that, forward so we can get more people to do that. So tell us a little bit about your history on becoming a coach. Like, was that something that you had in mind? Like, is that something that you were like, yeah, that's what I want to do?
Yes and no. It was one of those things that was probably more than a decade ago at this point. Yeah, it's probably been 12, 15 years where I was just kind of passionate with muscle building, seeing the results for myself. And there was just, YouTube was kind of in its early stages, or not really, probably 5 years into YouTube, people posting on YouTube, experts in this field. There was obviously bodybuilding forums. So I was just kind of engulfed with learning a lot about it and seeing the progress for myself, and then being able to kind of help Lauren and use the tools we learned to help her with her goals. So a lot of it's just kind of passion focused and following that. And then of course we've hired coaches and stuff like that and learned from experts, and she's gotten pretty far, as you can see. And we went to college, and it was one of those things, we were doing a lot of stuff for free, and we started this LLC probably in 2014, 2015. And then I think in 2017, I was kind of finishing up my degree, and we kind of just were like, hey, let's try to do this full time. Had to kind of get more into the business side of things, where you have to ask people for money, right? It's like, it's somewhat sales, not just consulting for people's fitness goals and all that. And so it kind of just fell into our lap in that regard, where you do it yourself, you learn a bunch, you learn from others, you apply it to others as well. And then of course the marketing standpoint. And so that's kind of how we got into the whole coaching. It wasn't 10 years ago saying, hey, I want to be a coach online or anything like that. It was just kind of passion driven, and yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been fun.
That's awesome. Like, yeah, like one thing leading to the next, and
yeah, for sure.
Just enjoying everything and absorbing everything. Now, something that I wanted to also ask you is regarding like online coaching and stuff, because that's primarily what you guys do, or what you at least do. What would you consider as like the pros and the cons as far as like a coach perspective, but then maybe even also like a client perspective?
Okay, so pros and cons of online coaching. Well, I think people are just becoming a lot smarter, and they're critical thinkers, and obviously the internet came about and people are able to access this information a lot more. So I think people are getting pretty experienced, and they know what to do. It's just more about the accountability and guiding them. So that could be beginners or intermediates, as well as like super advanced people. And so I think that's kind of the pro, is that people can be all over the world, and I can help guide them based on their goals. And so that's cool. I think it's good for time. And cons would be that I'm not there physically. And that might just be more for like a beginner standpoint, or maybe like more of a technique within the training. But it kind of goes hand in hand, because there's definitely pros and cons to everything. Because it's like, sometimes it's hard to even be objective. Let's say if I'm talking about like bodybuilding and stuff like that, it's hard to even be that objective if you're constantly around that person in the gym, seeing them struggle. So there's definitely pros and cons to it all. I think as a coach, I don't know if there's too many cons, to be honest, other than that I like to be social and like to see people. So it's nice to kind of do some in-person stuff here and there, go to people's shows, help them in the gym, whatever it may be, and just talking on the phone with people, that can help. But yeah, so that's kind of, I think a con is that I actually like being social. And the pros would be just that it's super time efficient for me and I can help people across the world. As far as the athlete standpoint, it's just a matter of perspective, right? So some people really feel like they need a lot of attention and in-person training and stuff like that, compared to some people, like I said, just initially when I kind of starting out this conversation of the pros and cons, is that some people just need that extra little guidance and that big picture plan. And they don't want someone to be at the gym with them. You know, they know what to do, they know how to eat. So they just want that big picture guidance, whether it's planning out their goals and getting them to their goals and keeping the results, or planning out a competition prep for them. So it's definitely a lot of pros for people who are pretty experienced and they just want that kind of fine-tuning programming and just basically making their time the most worth it they can make it, right? Because they might be super busy, have getting their PhD, have children, businesses, etc. So time efficiency is probably pros for both of us, actually.
Yeah, that all makes sense. What would you say are some tips to get the most out of your coach, especially since, you would do like an online thing. So how do you get, how would a client get the most out of the online coach?
So to get the most out of your online coach would be probably to actually do the work and listen, right? So being coachable. So that's probably a number one thing, is actually like being coachable. Then giving the right amount of info. So some of that could be the coach's fault or not, where sometimes people are giving me too little or giving me way too much information. So just kind of finding the right biofeedback I need from them, which usually I kind of let them know exactly what I'm looking for as far as the media I want them to send me in, the data, what's relevant, what's not. And then it's them asking questions. So probably asking the right questions and stuff like that, sticking to the plan and being honest with your coach too, right? So if things aren't 100% or perfect, kind of just having that open communication. So some of those tips right there would probably be how to get the most out of your coach.
Yeah. I want to dive a little bit into, and of course, I know some of these questions might, you could probably like dive into them deeper, but weight loss versus fat loss differences, in your opinion as a coach, what would you kind of say about that?
Yeah. So as far as how I coach, I probably won't ever use the term weight loss. I mean, there will be some instances I will, but when I think of weight loss, I just think of someone losing weight and they could possibly lose muscle and stuff like that. Compared to fat loss, you're kind of just trying to lose fat. You might even be wanting to gain muscle, keep muscle. So usually when I think about weight loss, I think about someone who maybe is super heavy and, they go in the doctor's office and they're like, hey, you need to lose weight. You need to have weight loss for your health. So yeah, I never, but even if those clients came to me, I mean, I can give them tips to lose exponential amounts of weight for their overall health. But still, I usually don't use those terms, especially when people are lifting. So if you're just kind of just doing nutrition and just walking and, you're just trying to lose weight to be healthy and happy and all that and exercise, that's fine. So yeah, I guess fat loss is kind of the term I use a lot of times because my athletes and clients are lifting weights and they usually want that recomposition. So they want the muscle, they want the curves to fill out their clothes or not, right? And for the stage or whatever it may be. So I think those are probably the main differences.
Yeah. Because I think the general like population focuses on weight loss, whereas like once people start to get into like actual fitness, it's like we start focusing more on the actual fat loss, and that's the term that we, typically use.
Yeah, for sure. Even though some of these people probably should be doing fat loss and
Yeah.
trying to have a body recomposition, and some people are in positions to definitely put on muscle and get leaner at the same time, even if they are, in quotations, overweight.
Right. Yeah, because I think that like that's why I asked too, because weight loss is just kind of like you were saying, it's like, oh, just bringing down, the weight on the scale, but that doesn't mean fat loss is more of like actual bringing down the fat and maybe improving, like you said, the body recomp and adding in some muscle, which really, there's a huge difference in that.
Yeah, for sure.
What would you say is or is there, in your opinion, importance of tracking macros?
Well, I've been actually thinking a lot and talking a lot about this with people, and kind of steering people away at times from tracking macros. But of course, it depends. So, was the question, what are the pros of tracking macros?
No, just more of like, do you find that like there's an importance, like, or maybe even like, do you think that there's a time and a place for it even? And how does that kind of like, just your opinion on tracking macros, maybe as in general, or do you feel like is there a time and a place for it that works better, or, is it okay if somebody doesn't do it, or what's your opinion on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it always depends what level people are at and what their goal is and all that. But yeah, tracking your macros is nice because let's say initially you aren't tracking calories, you aren't tracking macros, you might know a little bit about it, but it definitely helps you learn what's in food, helps you learn portion control, and the energy balance within this food. So not just the calories, but the proteins, fats, and carbs. Especially if your goal is to build muscle, you're going to want to know kind of even the basics of, like I'm going to eat this egg and chicken or whatever it may be, and there's protein in it, and it's going to help me rebuild and recover. But I think that's probably the biggest importance of it all, is the fact that it teaches what's in food, calorie and macro wise, and portion control. And if you're trying to get to that next level conditioning for a bodybuilding stage, or just, in quotations, optimize your results, it's probably going to be helpful to eat a high protein diet or something like that. But at the same time, a lot of people might be so focused on macros. I've been working with some people that I'll ask them to track calories and protein, and they just have a lot of trouble with that. So it's kind of interesting that the whole macros is even easier for some people, and then counting their calories, which might be better for longevity, just knowing calories and protein, and they just have no idea. So I think it's always kind of a depends thing where, macros can be super helpful for some people, especially when it comes to knowing what's in food, being a critical thinker, portion control, helping them with their physique goals and fitness goals, helping them recover, all that. And then also it might be helpful for some people to just be doing like protein and calories. And then for some, you eventually move to intuitive eating or whatever it may be for longevity reasons. So yeah, the importance is just knowing what's in food and portion control, because those habits last a long time.
Right. Do you feel like there's ever a type of person or a point where it could actually become more like negative rather than positive at all?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's been becoming a big thing recently, I think, with mental health and eating disorders, because you could think of eating disorder as almost being on a spectrum of, there's some people who want to be like super thin and all that, and then some people who want to be super big and whatever it may be. So just, it's always that kind of spectrum of what an eating disorder is. So I think that's becoming more common now, where people are going back to what I said earlier in the podcast, like the all or nothing mentality. So it's like you slip up on your macros, and it kind of snowballs effects into overeating or negative thought patterns. So, it's funny because a lot of that is estimations, especially processed foods. So I'm pretty sure a lot of those macros you'll see and calories you'll see if you're counting on a package, is 20% off or whatever it can be, and no one would bat an eye. Obviously, Whole Foods are a little bit more precise, but my point is that you're, even if you are tracking your macros, it's not like it is perfect anyway. And you probably can be somewhat in a range, but so I think that's kind of a negative thing I've seen with people, is that they'll start tracking macros and get so focused on it where they actually have a negative thought pattern where if they don't stick to it, they just feel bad about themselves, or maybe it switches into an overeating session or whatever it may be. So I think there is some negative stuff with it all. And yeah, just being able to kind of do it all, having the balance of like moving into habitual meals for an off season or a maintenance phase for people just trying to like maintain their physique. So definitely can be negative, but I think with the right strategy and basically, the right coach or guidance, or just even being able to have people kind of switch their mindset of like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Right. Yeah, there's like a level of self-awareness that one has to take accountability. Because something else too that I've noticed, and even I sort of experienced at one point was, it's like how knowing that like, oh, these are my macros, and then you're starting to figure out how you can fit the most like foods, and not focus on the healthier, stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's pretty interesting, actually. I've been seeing some people, they spend, and I did this too, you spend a lot of time in the kitchen, you're trying to fit stuff into your macros, and then you eat it super quick anyway, and it took so long so it's like you're just so ultra focused, even just spending too much time, when some meals can be pretty simple. Like I don't know whatever happened to like not being able to just have like some crackers and tuna fish or whatever it may be, like a sandwich or something like that, something you maybe grew up on. That was like a simple, easy meal. You don't have it all the time, but you know what I mean? Like there could be meals out there that just are pretty simple on the go, and it doesn't have to be this extravagant meal, and it can kind of help you get out of the kitchen. And then next thing you know, you're able to kind of stick to the plan a little bit more.
Yep, for sure. And then, so another thing is, this is more so on a competitor perspective, but like the importance of diet breaks, refeeds, reverse dieting. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of those?
Yeah, for sure. I think they definitely gained a lot of popular in the last decade or so. I think what's nice about the refeeds and everything you kind of mentioned, like diet break and refeeds, when you're in a fat loss phase, is it can help you mentally, right? So like you're dieting down, and psychologically, it could be helpful to have a day with more food or a couple days. I think when you do more than just one day, though, it'll probably help a little bit more, like less just with mindset and more with hormonal, like cortisol levels and water retention and recovery and training performance, like having more than just 24 hours, but having 48 hours, or like you mentioned, the diet break where you're doing like a whole week of higher food. You can also kind of help people's peaking. So especially for competitors, I kind of can see how people will respond to carbs, help them, learn their bodies a little bit more and how they respond throughout the whole fat loss phase through those refeeds and even diet breaks, and can kind of help me peak them. And then as far as the reverse diet, I think it's a little bit, I don't know, there's definitely a mix. And that's even for the refeeds, because you could technically probably not even do carb cycling or that many refeeds. And there's been studies recently that people didn't lose that much, like they didn't lose any more muscle or anything like that. Like they kept as much muscle as the refeeds. So you could just diet on higher calories technically and never have to do like a diet break or refeed. You know what I mean? So like, let's say you do all these low days and then you do these carb cycling with the higher days, you could just pick calories that are kind of in the middle. And as long as you stick to the plan and diet down, you could technically still just lose similar weight. But there'll be people that'll tell you that you keep more muscle with the refeeds and it helps you stick to the plan and helps you recovery. And again, like I talked about, peaking. So there's definitely pros and cons to that. And same with the reverse diet. I mean, some people that have been doing this a long time, they might not need to do as much of a reverse diet as people think, where they could kind of just go back to their off-season habitual meals, and yeah, they're going to gain some weight. But it depends. It depends how often you're going to compete. I mean, if you're going to take a long time off in between the stage, you could probably gain a decent amount of weight pretty quick. And compared to if you're going to compete often, you're going to want to stay somewhat lean. I think the biggest thing with the reverse diet is actually, I use it a lot of times at the end of a prep, where people are just so, not run down, but just like, they're just so into the fat loss phase, and they're just grinding, and their metabolism's like on fire. If you've ever heard that metaphor, where basically your cellular turnover is happening at a very fast rate, super lean, everything's like screaming for resources and nutrients. And I'll actually kind of up people's carbs at the end of a contest prep, and they'll actually kind of help with cortisol levels. They'll lose the water retention. They might fill out a little bit and kind of revive their physique, and sometimes even just get a little bit leaner. So right before someone's like glutes come in, if they're looking super stringy and we have a little bit of time and they're just really lean already, I'll just kind of reverse diet them. They'll get a tad leaner, they'll get a tad fuller. So if you have the time for it, you could even reverse diet in a prep. But a lot of times what helps people with reverse dieting is the fact that it helps people adhere to the plan. So if you just say, hey, go back to your off-season habitual meals, and they don't have those good habits or behaviors, and then they just kind of all or nothing mentality, extremist mentality, they just totally go off the bandwagon. And so a lot of times reverse diet can actually just help with people kind of adhering to it. So I know there's been a lot of money making in that, where coaches are like, hey, your metabolism's damaged and you need to reverse diet and get your metabolism back up. I'm not saying that's wrong, because that probably could help people for 2 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it may be. It depends how long they've been dieting. But a lot of times it just helps their adherence and sticking to the plan, which isn't a bad thing either. But a lot of people who thinks their metabolism is damaged, or adapted, and it's like you have to reverse diet for 6 months, might not be the case.
Yeah. And so like when it comes from everything that you said, it almost kind of boils down to like, it depends, right? So like, it depends on the person and where they are as far as like in their journey of how long they've been doing whatever. And then just also in their personality, and, you know, that all kind of plays a part. And so I can imagine also there's a level of it that has to do with like how honest they are with their coach for them to be able to know exactly what way to approach, you know, all those different points. Yeah.
I mean, that's always my answer, is it depends. And I think most scientists will say that, or, I mean, yeah, it just always depends on the context. And then coaches will say that too, right? It always depends. And a lot of times, if people aren't even giving me that much information, I almost start to guess what I think they're doing, but I'll have like 3 to 5 options of what I think could be an option for them. And then I can kind of let them think about, you know, like you're saying, if they're not being fully honest with me, and I'm like looking at all the data and I'm like, hey, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this. Here are the options. Do you have any comments on what I just said? Because they didn't give me any information. But then they'll come back and talk to me a little bit more, and I'll get down to the root of the problem. And basically it helps create that buy-in. And then in the future, they are more honest. And then you kind of build that relationship with the coach, and definitely get more progress and wins out of it that way.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's maybe a mixture of like either they're afraid to admit to certain things, or lack of maybe even like self-awareness as to not knowing if that they're doing something, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a little bit of both for sure.
Yeah. Do you find that that's something common within the time that you've been coaching? Like, do you find like a lot of people that are not, they're really kind of like when they're, for example, in their check-ins, are they kind of like cut and dry, or do you notice some people like you having to like pull hair in order for pull teeth to get more information? Like, is that something that you have dealt with a lot?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, though, I think I just know people. I mean, I've worked with older people, I've worked with super young people, I've worked with college athletes. And so you kind of just, if you work with a lot of different type of people, you can kind of find what makes them click. The more I work with them, I kind of find that buy-in and where they buy into me, and then we're able to make more progress. But for sure, I mean, there's some people were giving me way too much information. I have to tell them to dial it down. Some people giving me none. I'm asking for specific information. And that same goes with honesty or non-honesty. I mean, it's probably in every industry though, especially health and fitness and all that.
Yeah. So something that I know that you mentioned before, like even in your, your videos and stuff like that, but I want to talk a little bit about it here, is mastering the basics. How would you go about explaining that? Like, what would you consider as mastering the basics?
Well, the basics would be probably nutrition, training, and even more basic than that, it's like staying hydrated, drinking water and liquid, sleeping well. Yeah, all those basics, probably just like sleep, hydration, nutrition, training, cardio, those type of basics, and then sticking to the plan. So sometimes the basics could just be, hey, just kind of stay consistent and stay adherent. So mastering the basics might be, hey, just go to the gym 3 days a week. You're able to stick to that, adhere to it. Okay, good. We can do that long term, compared to like going 5-6 days a week. And then next thing you know, you're not able to stick to it or you get injured. So some of that can be strategy, where mastering the basics is doing less than a lot of people think. And same with going back to perfectly tracking your macros. You could probably just somewhat track calories, start learning how to, whatever it may be, using an app or writing it on a notepad and weighing out your food somewhat, learning portion control. So, and then sticking to those habits and habitual meals and high protein diet or whatever it may be, healthy food, whole foods, foods that digest well for you and you enjoy, and sticking to that. So that's probably mastering the basics there. Maybe bringing yourself through some different stages, whether it's a maintenance phase for a while, maybe doing some type of fat loss phase or a cutting phase, right? And then maybe even a gaining phase at times, and not cutting all the time. So some of those processes would be mastering the basics and mastering the process. And that's probably what I mean by mastering the basics. And then it just like kind of falls into place. If you look at people who've been doing this a while and they're just those guys in the gym or women in the gym and men that are in the gym, right? And they're working hard and they're eating a high protein diet and they just look really awesome. And they're like, yeah, I don't compete, but I just live the lifestyle. So
yeah, and the only reason I bring that up too is because I hear and I see a lot of people constantly are like, okay, it's like all or nothing approach, like you mentioned earlier. And it's like there's a different level of basics that I think we need to like come back to and first get that down before we start moving on to the next thing.
Well, it's not flashy, right? The basics aren't flashy.
Yeah.
So I think it's not even people's fault. It's marketing, it's the algorithm, it's social media now. So people are kind of flashing all these new exercises and the supplement and the fad diets, right? Back in the day, it was like Atkins diet, which isn't wrong necessarily, but then it's like now keto or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
The carnivore diet's been getting popular recently. So sometimes people are just flashing these like quick result kind of scenarios, take the supplement, do this meal plan. And there's just kind of a bigger picture. If you can master, then you can kind of have that longevity more so. And it's just less flashy. It's less easy to sell. So going back to even a question you said previously, where you're talking about how do you find clients that do this or that, right? And they're sticking to the plan. A lot of times, if you just kind of put that information out there, you're going to only get that type of population that come to you where they are critical thinkers and they, they want to do it the less flashy, more, they kind of just on that same level with you, where they're like, okay, I understand it's less flashy, but I just know if I do this for the next 6 months, or even 6 weeks or whatever it may be, and I just kind of do it from the basics and kind of get a better foundation and stick to it long term and get results for life, right? Lifting for life.
Yeah. Now I wanted to ask a few questions regarding like getting Lauren to the stage. So, you became her coach, which when was it exactly that you started to coach her?
Well, I've always kind of done her training, probably
Okay.
since 2014 or so. And then as far as doing the nutrition side of things, I've always done her kind of maintenance, off-season nutrition. We did hire a coach when she was 12 weeks out from her show in 2015. Same with 2017. It was probably like 18, 20 something weeks out from a show. She'd hire kind of a contest prep coach. So I've always been coaching her. But as far as like taking over her contest preps and all of her nutrition was probably 2018-ish, 2019.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Now, diving into a little bit of that, as far as like, do you think that there's a preference in, like, because I hear this all the time, and seeing that you have been her coach and and having her as a coach, I mean, as a technical, quote unquote client, would you say that there's a preference in different states as to how they judge and what they look for in bikini?
Well, excuse me. So what was the question? So what the judges are looking for in bikini, or how's it changed, or
like, so I've heard a lot of comments, but and so I'm trying to like figure out, okay, like, is this really true, as to they show preference about certain level of dryness or a certain level of leanness in different states when as to what they're looking for.
Oh, probably. I mean,
With her experience, yeah, it's what I'm.
Well, it's a pretty subjective sport, and then it depends who shows up. So, I mean, if there's a bunch of Lamborghinis sitting there, and then you kind of have this like Ferrari or Porsche there, it's kind of hard to measure the Porsche and the Ferrari compared to like the Lamborghinis. So I think that has something to do with it. If there's just a ton of physiques that kind of look the same, and then there's just like this physique that doesn't, it's hard to pinpoint where they are. So it depends who shows up, right? Some people are leaner, some people are more muscle, tall, short, whatever it may be. And then it is a subjective sport as well. So whoever's judging could play a role. And then, yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. It's just that the judges, it's a subjective sport. So if there's not a standardized of like the same judge, but a lot of the judges, it depends on the top. If it's the top level, a lot of the judges do travel. So it's usually similar judges all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it changes from state to state as far as like the dryness and all that. I think it's more just like who shows up and looks on that day.
Okay. As a coach, is there anything that you would like to see as far as like the IFBB bikini, for it to change, or do you foresee any changes in that?
Well, it's kind of a tough question. I think it is tough having all the different heights.
Mm-hmm.
So usually when you're an amateur, you have in the NPC, there's classes. And so it's based on height. And then even to like when you're pro card, it can be based on height. And then you go to the pro league and it's just kind of a free for all, which isn't a bad thing. But I think that's something to note, is that there's really tall physiques and then there's really kind of short physiques. So maybe even just like a short and tall could be helpful. And it's tough because there's more standard poses in a lot of the other divisions and there's more poses. So I think with bikini and men's physique, there's just a front and back. And so there, a lot of times they're looking at this front side of you, the back side of you, maybe transitions, which I don't even know if they actually look at transitions that much. Like we're having, the way they walk, they'll have the women walk. I just don't know if they're judging that, because sometimes their waist can look really small as they walk forward, but then on the side hip pose or the front hip pose, their side looks really, really big or something like that. So I guess that would be kind of a thing, is just judging more and being more transparent about what they're judging and looking for. That's probably the biggest thing, I think. And I think everyone can kind of agree with that. It's just, it's hard to standardize when there's less poses.
Moving on to a little bit of the training aspect of things. When someone needs to build a certain area or bring up an area, how realistic time-wise would you say that one would need to consider to take that time away to make it happen?
Well, if you're bringing up one specific area, it kind of depends on what level you're at, because there's a lot of times you can kind of all train the same when you're first starting out. But then, yeah, as you kind of get more involved into a specific sport or specific division within that sport, and as you become more experienced, you might need to be more specific on bringing up a body part or that scale or whatever it may be, if I'm speaking super general. So yeah, you just, as you get more advanced, you're going to have to start being more specific. And then a lot of times people just hammer away everything still, compared to necessarily taking away work and volume from your strengths. So if you just have great calves or great delts and you need to get bigger quads, yeah, you do more stuff for quads, but you might want to take some of that, let's say you put extra volume and extra sets towards your quads, you might need to actually take away some of those sets from your delts, whatever it may be, because you can't just keep crushing everything the same. There's only so much you can recover from. So that's number one, is actually just being smart with where you place volume. But as far as being realistic on the time and goal, yeah, it always depends. I think but as far as like the top level, again, it just depends, right? There's some of these people that are still kind of maybe doing it like drug free. And so they might need a lot of time away from the stage to grow. And if they're taller physique, they might need to fill out their frame more. And it could be a genetic thing too. Like some people can just pile on muscle pretty quick. So it always depends. But as far as like realistic goals, yeah, I think it's one of those things, as far as like taking enough time to not always be cutting. And so if you're cutting more often than you're eating a lot, right? So if you're eating a surplus and you're able to train in that environment and you're doing that more often than you're cutting, then you're going to be in a good environment to grow muscle. But if you gain all that weight back really quick, so if you compete often at the top level and you get really, really lean, and then after show, you just gain it back really, really quick, the next time you prep, even if you prep in the next year, you're kind of just getting that body fat off. So a lot of times it could just be strategy of not even taking more time off, but actually keeping the results and keeping the recomp going, where you stay somewhat lean. Obviously you need to recover post show and all that, but yeah, probably just retention of muscle as you kind of diet down, and then keeping the results after, still recover and get weight back, but then starting your prep at a better position the next time. So that's how you're going to be able to do it at like the top level, other than just the obvious answer of like, yeah, take more time off to not compete all the time and take 2-3 years off and grow more. So.
And what I'm hearing a lot is it's like a theme, but it's so, I mean, I get it. It's true. It's like it depends, right? Like a lot of these questions that I've asked, it's like a lot of, it depends. But the thing that I like to hear that is because there's a level of it that like you hear a lot of people comparing themselves to other people. And that's the part that like, it's kind of like also what I want to show is like, okay, we can't really compare, because it just, everything always depends and everyone is so different. So it's nice to hear like all, what you're saying, because it kind of like validates that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of cheesy to say the you versus you, but it's definitely true. Yeah, definitely true. Even at the top level, because if it is a subjective sport at the top and you are getting top 10 in the world or whatever it may be, or getting high honors in your classes and stuff, yeah, you don't really understand people. It's the hard truth of basically genetics. Bodybuilding is genetics, but you can't control that. So I think the more experienced you get, whether you have good genetics or not, the more you realize you can't control that, and it becomes more you versus you. So it's usually like super experienced people, genetics or not, that good genetics or not, are usually saying, hey, yeah, it's you versus you.
Yeah. Yeah, because I see a lot of girls are like, oh, I want to grow my glutes, for example. And you can obviously, put in some work and time. But if you compare yourself to another girl who has a different structure than you, then it's just like not going to happen in a way, because of the genetics, like you mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to be. I think that happens with time, though. I mean, you have to kind of go through it, and then you learn through the experience more so than just people telling you.
Yeah.
I could sit here and talk, but then if you're listening, you're like, sure, yeah, I get it. But then when they go experience it, like, oh, I get it. You're like, yep.
Definitely. I think that's happened to me. So I get it. What would you suggest? I know this is kind of like a vague question, but like first time competitors, or somebody that's looking to compete. And let's just try to get a little bit more specific. Let's just say that she's maybe a girl just started to work out and she barely has been like lifting for like 6 months or whatever. What would you advise her as to, kind of like the next steps to take, or what she should be doing, what she should be focusing on?
Yeah, so it goes down to genetics, and then it goes down to if they did sports growing up or not. People who are athletes, they might have more muscle too. So it's not just how long they've been lifting, but their whole training age as well. And so looking at their physique, yeah, you can tell me how tall you are and your age and some of that background, and you can tell me how much you weigh, but until I see photos, it's not, or video, it's kind of hard to do that. But if they've been lifting for 6 months, and as a first time competitor, well, one, it's not a bad thing to prep if you've only been doing it for 6 months or a year or two, whatever. You can see if you enjoy it, right? So you could like do a contest prep, get on stage, see if you actually enjoy that part of the process. So it's never a bad thing. I mean, you look at a lot of people with first time competitor shows, they're not conditioned enough, and even just super experienced elite athletes. So sometimes it's just kind of just doing it. And then, because let's say you're like, hey, I need to grow, and you just never compete. And then it's like 3 or 8 years later, and then you just never do it. But it's not a bad thing to take that time, because a lot of times you can grow quite a bit when you first start lifting. So it's not a bad thing to like lift for 6 months or even 3 years, get all those newbie gains, lift the right way, get good technique, get a lot stronger, and kind of live that lifestyle with those behaviors, which is kind of more of a longevity maintenance, gaining experience there, especially when it comes to habitual meals and behaviors there, sleep, lifting, all that, and filling out your frame, all that stuff. And then if you do a prep after you've kind of got those initial newbie gains, and maybe you're an intermediate lifter at that point, so then you can definitely prep down and have more filled out frame. You definitely don't look as stringy. And then also when you're done with prep, have more behaviors to kind of rely back on. You're like, oh, I've done this for 3 years. I can, I just prepped for 6 months, but I know what I need to do when I get out of this prep. So I think it's a little bit of both, of just do it, but also definitely want to take some time and kind of get some newbie gains and fill out your frame and get some habits before kind of going into a full on like contest prep.
Right. So. Now I'm curious also, with the experience that you have now gained and having coached, I know, I mean, at least at this point, for sure, that I know of, Lauren to like the Olympian and stuff like that. What are some of the things that you would say that you've learned that has been like your biggest accomplishments or like lessons?
Biggest accomplishments and lessons, helping like top athletes or
Just
my in
anything,
general?
just, yeah, you in general.
Oh, probably just being able to kind of make a living coaching. And so that's accomplishment in itself. Like I got to pay the bills and survive. And then I would say helping a ton of people learn and get better physiques and hit their goals. And then, yeah, I would say for sure getting Lauren top 10 in the world in 2022 or 2021. That's definitely a top accomplishment as well. And then, so yeah, those few things probably.
Okay, nice. Now, one last question too, regarding the coaching things is I'm curious as to like, so I at one point was actually I was trying to, become a coach. I mean, I'm certified and stuff like that, but I was like, oh, I want to start doing online coaching and stuff like that. And I struggle a lot. So I'm just curious as far as like the marketing side of things and the importance of it and how, especially with online coaching, like how does that work for you specifically?
So real quick, I like to give these tips for people who want to be coaches is educate yourself and have passion and work hard, obviously. Show people that you can do it yourself, maybe help others, showing that you can help others. But then, of course, that last bit is the marketing and business side of things. So I'd say but it's obviously changing a lot with the social media. So it's just kind of being able to kind of learn that side of things too, which I'm still learning too, as far as the marketing. So just using social media, a lot of it can be word of mouth though. I mean, as you get more experience, so it's not just even doing social media marketing and doing Google ads or Facebook, whatever it may be, you could probably, or YouTube, you could probably also just get a lot of referrals. I think giving out a lot of information, not everything, and just sitting there and how-tos all the time for free. I mean, obviously you need to get paid, but yeah, giving out some free information too on those. So
what are your plans, if you don't mind me asking? Any plans for you as far as like competing goals, or what are some goals that you'd like to, whatever obviously you're comfortable with sharing, anything that's upcoming?
Yeah, well, Lauren is competing at the end of this year. She's going to do the Tampa Pro. So she's like 25-ish weeks out. So those are some goals for us, and just kind of keep building our business up as far as online. We do have some kind of other goals in the mix that we're speaking about too, as far as opening up our own little boutique gym here locally.
Oh, nice.
Whether it's, so some of that stuff helping, and then having people under us coaching that. And as far as me personally competing, I'm never going to say never and be like, I'm never competing again. But for right now, I don't have a ton of goals competing, kind of just more coaching. But yeah, I mean, I might compete again for sure.
Is it something that you don't enjoy as much, or do you just like the coaching part more?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy coaching a lot more. I think competing, some of it's a genetic thing, and then some of it's like I just have a lot of injuries and back injuries, and I've been dealing with that for like a decade. And even though I'm not sitting here in pain, right now or anything like that. It's just, it's a lot for me to push my body to that limit. And some of it is genetics. Like I have 3 degenerated discs in my lumbar. So it's not just herniated or bulging discs anymore. It's like, and some of that's genetic. So, that's probably why I don't want to compete a lot. But yeah, I might do like a show in the future and body recomposition, maybe a photo shoot. I was thinking about doing a photo shoot in August, maybe. So having a body recomposition for that kind of thing. But yeah, I enjoy coaching a lot more for sure.
Yeah.
I think I'm better at it, right? If you're better at it.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And I mean, if your health is a factor, then I would definitely just, that's important. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for making the time. And, I really appreciate your time today and sharing everything that you shared. And definitely looked to seeing, you know, more of what you guys continue to post and encourage you guys, and definitely be looking forward to, I'm sure Lauren's going to be recording for YouTube and stuff like that, right? I know she typically has been
Yeah, definitely.
posting her process. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's been fun. I appreciate you reaching out. Love to do it again in the future sometime. And yeah, we'll definitely be posting up on YouTube. We have like a Team Cosmic Bodies YouTube. We do a lot of informational stuff there. I think Lauren will definitely be vlogging on her YouTube. And so yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, I will be posting all your guys' information in the information part of the notes. But definitely I highly, you know, suggest everyone to watch, you know, the YouTube videos, and to follow up with you guys on Instagram as well. Because you guys offer some really good advice and stuff like that, some good tips and other information that, you know, everyone can learn from. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep.